Record. Hi, hello, salutations. Welcome to personality psychology, but also to the new academic year, the fall term. Um, I always try to put together a sort of welcome video like this at the beginning. Apologies that it's kind of late in relation to the rest of the stuff, but part of the reason I'm emphasizing that I want folks to watch this is, yeah, I mean, part of it's hi, hello, welcome to the course, hi, hello, this is me. But like right now, I mean, the beginning of every term, of course, but particularly in the fall term at the beginning of a whole new academic year, like I always call it, like you're getting syllabused to death, which I guess in my head I mean like it's syllabus after syllabus after syllabus, start here module after start here module, get this textbook, sign up for these articles, get onto this platform. Like, I know there's a gajillion moving parts. So, anyway, point being, like, yes, I want to do the welcoming thing and all that, but more than anything, what I actually want to do is to try and speak to kind of the nuts and bolts stuff of the course. Because hopefully as you're going through the syllabus schedule, Canvas modules, those sorts of things, a massive proportion of that stuff is it's just boilerplate stuff. It's university policy, conduct code, etc. And yes, it's all important, but like what we really need to know right now is like, okay, what's going to happen in this course? What are the expectations? Where do the points come from? How are they evaluated? So those are the things I guess I wanted to, at least in a cursory way, kind of cover here, anticipate some of the things that are maybe not totally clear, questions that happen consistently, or mix up, stuff like that. So anyway, welcome. That's my intro, I suppose. I guess I should introduce myself because, for better or worse, I'm going to be kind of steering the ship this term. I'm Christopher Collins. Hello. Some of y'all, I recognize your names, and so welcome back to working with me. For the rest of you all, oh boy, you're in for a surprise. So, in terms of this course, actually, so my background, I'd spare you all the details in that, but my background is actually much more tied into like behavioral neuroscience and comparative animal behavior. And so 90 some percent of the time, like usually my courses are physiology, brain and behavior, neuroscience, research methods, statistics, everybody's favorites. Um, so this course, this personality course, has become a relatively consistent one for me now here at OSU, which I really have come to enjoy because it's a completely different animal than what I'm traditionally kind of more accustomed to. For lack of a better description, we're going to be a lot more philosophical, a lot more theoretical. There's a lot more latitude with the ideas and things like that. And it's just a very different beast, right, than when I'm teaching a quantitative course and statistical analysis and, this very linear, rigid kind of stuff. So, anyway, for what it's worth. What else could I tell you about myself? Probably not a whole lot. I've taught at a number of different schools, actually, over the years. The joke being I'm the nomadic professor. So I've been at OSU now for, I think this is, I started just before the pandemic, for what that's worth. So I've been here a few years now. I live in Portland, and I teach from up here, so I'm not down in Corvallis. I don't have an actual physical space on the Corvallis campus. We have a campus up here. That's a whole different story. Spare you that right now. Other than that, the only things that would probably play into this is I'm a single dad. So I got 6-year-old twins. So my life is bananas. Pretty much consistently. But they're amazing, they're perfect, they're awesome, they're wonderful. But every now and again, of course, that eats up a lot of my lifetime thought, behavior, everything else too. So just so you're aware, I'm always running around like a chicken with my head cut off. What else? I guess as we kind of shift into the course, I think it sounded like most everybody, at least from what I've been able to kind of tell from my end, has been able to kind of figure out the textbook situation. I have some emails I still need to get back to you all on, but we're using the Feist textbook for the course. I know the way that it is displayed sort of within the bookstore's web page. What they're trying to do, of course, is a good thing, and they're trying to present the various options to you here if you want to buy the physical book. brand new, here you can do that. If you want to buy it used, here are some options for that. If you want to get an ebook or a rental or a, but it also becomes very confusing because ultimately here are all these options and you're trying to figure out what do I have to have. So the short answer to that is, we are just using the one textbook, the Feist Personality Textbook. And then all those things that you're seeing within the bookstore or listed around are just the various ways in which you can access that thing. And there's no reason in this course to have a powerful preference for the physical book versus the digital book versus, I haven't spent the time, honestly, to go through the former editions of the book to see if there's been substantive, really big changes made. But even older editions of the book that you can generally find for extraordinarily cheap are very likely to be also perfectly effective and work in a course like this. If you feel uncomfortable about that, whatever, reach out, let me know, and we can just kind of look, compare them side by side, just to make sure that you're not at any kind of a disadvantage. Otherwise, whatever format the textbook takes for you, that's going to be essentially the touchstone for us for this course. And so what you're going to find is that all of the other pieces that I'm going to go through here in relation to the course are all going to connect back and be based pretty much off of the textbook, the flow of the textbook, the content of the textbook. And there are a lot of reasons for this. The biggest part of it, of course, is this is an online environment. All of my schooling was always done face to face when I was on the other end of the spectrum, and all of the years prior to the pandemic, I was always face to face. So I'm still adjusting to this kind of digital online platform way of doing things, just so you're aware. But that does feed into the fact that, usually when I would do a lecture, I would teach a course, we would have the textbook, but I would make sure that what I was bringing to the table was supplemental to that. I'm not just I had plenty of professors who just as well stood up there and read the fucking textbook to me. So traditionally that would be what I would not do. I would very much be going to tangential examples, side examples, contemporary, whatever. The point being, in an online environment, we don't have that same kind of relationship. We don't have that same kind of interaction with one another. So it only makes sense in the idea of fairness, consistency, that sort of thing, that we do have a touchstone like the text. So that's the longest possible way of saying we're going to stick pretty close to the textbook. And as I get into some of what these assignments are going to look like and things like that, you'll see just how intimately tied that we're going to be with that. So I hope that clarifies things with the book and that. I guess we just as well take the step from there into where are the points going to come from? What are the expectations going to be in the next 10, 11 weeks that we're spending together? I guess I meant to mention at the very beginning of this video and neglected to, you're probably aware of this, typically in any given term, generally winter term, spring term, summer term, 10 weeks with an 11th week, finals week. And of course, that's the same for this fall, but we always start on this Wednesday of the so-called 0 week. So I sent some quick messages out to you all yesterday morning as the courses were published and we were kind of getting the ball rolling, but more or less indicating to you, we are in this so-called 0 week, and at least insofar as what that looks like in my head is that when I took all of the stuff for these courses, all the different courses that I teach, all of them are laid out for a 10-week term with an 11th week, finals week, whatever that looks like. And so even though we have this additional handful of days here in the fall term, I don't expand anything out to make it look different. We still have the 10 weeks, but those 10 weeks begin, this coming Monday. So for all intents and purposes, hopefully you're in the course. You are starting maybe to do some of the readings, setting up your profile, familiarize, all that good stuff. Great, by all means, be doing that. But this 0 week is definitely, again, to my way of thinking, it's just a nice way for us to, warm up a little bit as we make our way in. It's a new academic year, for Christ's sake. We're going to pull a muscle or hurt ourselves if we jump right in too quickly. Anyway, you get the idea what I mean. So this week, there's nothing to be like stressed out. There's nothing due this week, nothing due this weekend. Everything that we're kind of doing right now, it's going to move right into next week. But as we move into next week and we get to Monday, we will be hitting the ground running because these are very condensed courses. I've in the past been almost exclusively in semesters, 16-week semesters. So in addition to adjusting to this online environment, I'm also still adjusting to these terms that are far more condensed and much more intense for what it's worth. So just know that, just to clarify, so you kind of understand the schedule, our dates are a bit wonky right now. So the dates that are in Canvas are kind of wonky. They don't map on to the dates that are on some of the individual like Word documents and PDFs. It's kind of a mess. So part of my 0 week and going into the weekend as I can find the time is to go in and I'm trying to micromanage the ever-loving whatever out of that to try and get everything correct and mapped on to what we're actually doing fall term of 2022. So you should see that. I will be in touch about that with additional messages and the like going forward. So what are those weeks going to look like? What are the expectations going to be? So with the textbook, we'll be covering a couple chapters like each week. And so for those chapters, we're going to have a couple of different things going on throughout the weeks. So week 1, week 2, week 3, and in most of our traditional weeks, we're going to have a couple of chapters. Each chapter has a quiz. Okay. And so these quizzes are meant to be relatively low stakes. They are contained within Canvas, built within Canvas. And so you go in, they are your traditional, brief, multiple choice questions that relate to, of course, the readings, the chapters, the stuff that we're covering during that particular week. Now, for these quizzes, they are not proctored or anything like that. We'll talk about the proctoring thing in a moment. There's no restriction on like your materials, for instance. So you can have your book, you can have your notes, you can have the World Wide Web, you can have your friend, the personality professor, you can whatever you want for those quizzes. That's all good. They are meant to be low stakes, and the questions that you're going to, the content of what make up these quizzes are actually derived directly from what's called a test bank. And maybe you know what that means. Test banks are something that we get kind of alongside the textbooks themselves. Here's the text, here's the layout of the chapters and everything that's going to be covered. And then the test bank is just this massive repository of questions written, not just in relation to the textbook, but actually, written by the same people who do the textbook. Maybe some by the author, way more likely it's like they're graduate students, but it's neither here nor there. Point being, that test bank is where these questions will be pulled from. And each quiz is actually unique. This is part of a control kind of procedure for the online world too. So what that means is every time one of you logs in to do one of these quizzes, it's going to auto-generate, algorithmically kind of pull items, certain number of items per chapter to be representative. And so each quiz, and as we'll talk about, this will happen with the exams too, is going to be a unique combination. Every one of you is going to be taking essentially a different quiz. And later, I won't spend a bunch of time now, I will come back to the fact that I'm very cognizant about the fact that this can statistically sometimes make an unlevel playing field. It's unlikely, but this is neither here nor there. But I'm very cognizant and I'm very obsessive compulsive. And so I do statistical analysis on all of this stuff that we're going to be doing, exam scores, overall scores, all these different things to do my absolute best to sort of ensure things are as fair as possible. For what it's worth, I'm over describing all of this. So I hope that makes sense. Again, the quizzes, no pressure, no proctoring. You can have your materials. You'll be taking one quiz per chapter through the term. And I'll speak here in a moment. We're going to start talking about the other pieces. The quizzes, ostensibly, so when you get in there and what you're going to see in the instructions is, yeah, here you go, multiple choice, blah, 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 fill it out. You have this. The due dates This is a part I want to emphasize. This is another reason I hope everybody watches these videos so that I can make this as clear as I possibly can to everybody. The whole world changed in the pandemic. We all kind of understand that, and different ways in different little niches. And in our particular corner of the world, namely the eCampus online course world, particularly during the most intense time of COVID, we were trying to be as extraordinarily like flexible and malleable and accommodating and everything we could conceivably be because the world was on fire. And as it turns out, well, the world is still on fire. It's just a little bit different. The point of all of this being what you actually want to know, need to know, is that so these due dates, back then we almost did away with due dates altogether to try and be as accommodating as possible. In this course, in my courses right now, that is very much still true within some guidelines that I will make explicit. But with these quizzes, they're going to say, look, the quiz is due by what, 11:59, the Sunday night of the week in which we're going through that chapter. When you see that due date on a quiz, on a discussion forum, understand that for me, for us, for this course, those are much more mileposts than they are a kind of hard and fast, absolute, rigid rule. Get it in by 11:59 p.m. or you're screwed. That's not what we're doing. When you see this due date, 11:59 on the Sunday night of the week, that is hey, if you want to be on task, if you want to be on time and on schedule with the course and meeting all the milestones and doing the thing, that's what it is. That's where we all aspire to be. And the sort of running assumption that I think all of us are going to have, of course, is as we move through these weeks, we're going to assume that week you are doing the readings for that week. You are doing the discussions for that week. You are doing the stuff for that week. I am concentrated on that week. I'm engaging in the discussions, given the point, this sort of. But that being said, we are going to collectively move through the term on that running assumption. But I want you to understand that even though these due dates do create these mileposts, this is where you ought to be. That does not mean you cannot now take this quiz. So to give you a more extreme example, hopefully it doesn't come to this, but if something comes up, there's a death in the family, something happens with work, you fill in the blank. A million things that could happen. And you can't do like 2 weeks worth of quizzes, and then you return and you're scrambling to try and get caught up in all of that. You didn't just miss those. They aren't just gone to time. And in fact, if you need time as you're scrambling to get caught up and now it's several weeks out, you can still go back, revisit those, do them, and as long as they are in and the points are there, I'm not going to be worried about the fact that it came hours late, a couple days late, or even weeks late. So we're still trying to do this, like being reasonable and accommodating and everything else, while also trying to, retain some level of like structure and expectation and, predictability. But it's a dance. So I feel like I'm doing a poor job of explaining this, just to try and give you the bumper sticker, t-shirt, whatever version of that. So when it relates to the quizzes, and I'm about to talk about the discussion forums in a moment, you're going to see the due dates, take those as firm suggestions. And it's not going to be a big deal if you're not meeting those due dates with the quizzes. If you start getting too far behind or you do become concerned, I'm always here. Let's just be in touch. As long as we're in touch, as long as I'm privy to what's going on, we're good. We're all good and we'll get things figured out. So, for what it's worth. Let's talk about the discussion forums then, because not only do we have these quizzes each week in relation to the chapters, as I kind of indicated early on with this course being much more philosophical, much more amorphous. We're not going to be running statistics. We're not going to be cutting up, different brain circuitry and things like that. We're talking about ideas for the most part. And we're talking about individuals, and we're talking about sort of a sociocultural development of these ideas over the course of, well, I mean, frankly, centuries, but we're going to be focused more on the theorists of like the last century or so. All of that is to say, the discussion forums that we're going to have in the course, you're going to notice they take up a lot of real estate of what it is that we're doing in this class. There are going to be 2 discussions every single week, 2 separate individual discussion forums every single week. And as you go through that in Canvas and you see the layout of sort of the instructions, again, there's flexibility here, there's accommodation, but this is a little different than the quizzes. The quizzes you do, they're your quiz for your points, for your whatever. The discussion forums are, ideally supposed to be a place where we collectively do come together as a group, so to speak, right? We're all asynchronous and we're all scattered around the globe and all this kind of thing. But the discussion forums are this sort of commons area where we all come and talk about the ideas. What are we thinking about? What was most interesting? How did this work out? You're going to see, for instance, that the prompts of these discussion forums are going to be vastly different. Sometimes they're going to be just completely open-ended, wide open, like, hey, how about this over here? What you think about that? Other times there's going to be, you probably already know, there's like a gajillion personality assessment tools out there, questionnaires and inventories, and I'm an ABCDEFG and all of these things. We're going to talk about all those. But in addition to that, sometimes, I'm going to send you through. Go take the Myers-Briggs. See what you get. Let's talk about that. Go through and take a Big 5 based personality test. Or watch this video. Or read this transcript. Or, it's going to look like a lot of different things. The through line of all of these varied kind of topics and prompts and things like that, the through line to it is it's almost impossible to give a wrong answer. That is to say, they are profoundly open-ended questions written with the sole hope and expectation that it's a prompt for thought, right? What did you sort of, well, what am I trying to say? It depends so much on the individual, discussion forum itself, but it is meant to be profoundly open-ended. Speak to how you were thinking about this. How do you interpret this? How does this relate to your own life or to whatever else? And so the most straightforward way I can explain this to you is it is so hard to mess up a discussion forum. Really, it is. You would have to work really hard to give me an answer that was considered wrong. Generally, what ends up happening that people aren't getting points in the discussion forums is that, 1, they don't do them, of course. 2, they make an initial post, which is, here's what I thought, here's what I blah, 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 which is great. And then they cease to engage in the discussion whatsoever. They don't read anybody else's. They don't respond to anybody else's. They don't respond to other people's responses to their post. Kind of the whole point of the discussion forum thing. So this is me being as explicit as I can possibly be for you all, that with the discussion forums, it's just about participating. It's showing that you're engaged, right? You don't have to go to the textbook or go pull a paper or have this example and put citations at the bottom and have that level of academic rigor. If you do, well, hell yeah, you're my people. But on the whole, that's not what they're meant to be. Just talk about it. Engage the conversation. Engage your colleagues. Engage me. Let's have it be that kind of a place. And as long as you're showing up and doing that, that's what it's about. And so it largely is going to be the same thing. I'm not going to be stressing out about these particular due dates. Was this in by 11:59 on Wednesday night? Was this in by midnight on Sunday night? But because it is a collective endeavor, it's much harder to say, sure, you can just put them off, and then after we've all had these conversations, come back weeks and weeks later and make some posts in these, graveyard conversations that nobody's even visiting any longer. That said, life happens. Let's be in touch. Okay. This is taking way too long, as it always does. We're coming up on a half an hour. Oh my God. Okay, last things, and then I swear I'll leave you alone for a little while. Two more things to consider. We got the quizzes, great. Discussion forums, great. Do we have exams? Yeah, we do. Sorry about that. So, the way this class is set up, and I'll try not to spend too much time because it'll make more sense for me to revisit this as we actually approach them to give you all the details and the ins and outs and that. So for now, let's just do the kind of 30,000 feet flyover. We have 3 exams in the course. There are 2 exams that we're going to call midterms, even though neither of them occurs at the midpoint of the term. But 2 of what you would traditionally think of as more like a midterm exam. We're going to have one already coming up here in a few weeks. In week 4, I believe it is, will be the first midterm. And that midterm is going to cover, of course, just the content from what we're doing as of yesterday, moving through these first few weeks. And that midterm is, if you've ever had an online course or even a face-to-face course, like these exams, 50 multiple choice questions, keywords, some are keywords, some are applied, some are, just different kinds of multiple choice questions. These questions come from the exact same test bank associated with the textbook. So again, not optimal and not what I would do if I'm teaching in a classroom or something like that. But given the nature of this, it makes more sense to do it that way. A couple of things about that, though. So that means that the textbook and the quizzes and all the things that we're working on and focusing on are meant to prepare you for the content that you're going to find on that midterm. But I don't know what the specific content is going to be for you. Because like the quizzes, you're going to log in and an algorithm is going to create a novel exam for you. This number of questions from chapter 1, this number of questions from chapter 2, etc. I already alluded to my OCD tendencies and the fact that I will be going out of my mind to make sure these things are fair and appropriate. But a couple other things about the midterms. So, quizzes, not proctored, do them when you want, where you want, how you want, I don't care. Exams, not like that. So with the exams, we are doing proctoring. Probably almost all of you are already familiar with this, and almost surely there's a handful of you who are not. So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time here on it. So I'm going to kind of offer up some additional help, and maybe I'll try to post something optional for folks to check out later pertaining more to the proctoring piece. But we have shifted to using what's called Proctorio. The first year of the pandemic, we were using other forms of proctoring that were expensive to you, not to the school, and were horribly inconvenient. They were just not great. Proctorio is not perfect. I don't love it, and I doubt any of you do either. But it is a free platform, so it will cost nobody anything, thankfully. But most of you will have used it at this point. If you have not used it, I have a section in the Start Here module that should kind of introduce you to it, allow you to run some of the basics on your computer to make sure that it will run and the like. You must use Chrome in order for Proctorio to work as a browser. And it does require a camera and audio recording and things, because it is going to monitor you during the time that you're taking the exam. And what it's going to monitor for, of course, is nobody else is around, there's no conversation happening. It is going to determine whether or not you have additional pages up on your computer. tabs that might have information, content, whatever else. You will have to kind of scan your area because these are exams. So even though you can have your book, notes, friends, whatever the hell you want on the quizzes, not here, right? It's an exam. We're looking for what you know. So no book, no notes, no internet, no friends, just us, our lonesome little selves, and our big pulsing brains. Both of the midterms will look exactly like that. Midterm 1 will come after the first few weeks and only cover the content of that first chunk. The second midterm will come in week 8 and will only cover the content of what we had covered after the first exam up until that second exam. Same format, same number of questions, same kinds of questions, just pertaining to the other section. Without fail, I end up going in after the fact, all this I'm telling you about, doing the analyses and things like that on the scores, almost without fail, those scores will change. I always end up curving, bumping, changing, only ever in the positive direction. I would never decrease anybody's score. But just understand, and I'll try to remind you of this later because people will forget and freak out. The score that you get, bam, at the end you hit submit my exam and it says, here's your grade. It may or may not be. Almost certainly is not going to be because I will be making some of those adjustments. So again, take that for what it's worth. I will try to re-emphasize that later when we actually approach that. Last thing to tell you about. This sounds terrible. I swear to you it's not. I'm going to say the words. Don't freak out. Essay final. Oh, you're freaking out. Don't freak out. We have a final. It is an essay final. This sounds horrible. This sounds terrible. There's no way this can be a good thing. I swear to you, I promise to you, I've been doing this for a while. I have yet to ever arrive at the end of the term, have people go to take the essay final, and have them be upset about it. So that's the most ambiguous way I can sort of indicate it's really not going to be anything like what you think of when I say essay final. It is, I'll explain more about it later. It's just 2 short answer essays. I'm going to give you exactly the kind of information that you're going to want and need prior to that. And you have the entirety of finals week to fit it in and to work on those. So I'm not going to spend time on that now. It's many weeks away, though those many weeks are going to pass very, very quickly. But as we get closer to that, I will absolutely fill you in so much more on the details and everything to expect. If you're the type that's like, I want to know now, that's fine. Like, reach out. I'm happy to talk about it. But it will be a brief 2 short answer essays. It doesn't take any longer, arguably shorter than the 50 question midterm style ones, and we can speak to all of that kind of down the road. The only other thing that's jumping to mind right now, and by way of, it's not really assignments, but just points and the like, you probably maybe have already seen in the grade book, I think the first few columns relate to extra credit opportunities. And there's a few of them, and they help pick up a handful of points kind of along the way. You're welcome to look at those. People, of course, start sending emails about 4 seconds after the first exam asking about extra credit, without fail, in every course. No judgment here, but what you'll see if you do like click through on those, for instance, is the extra credit questions, or at least those few that are available and already posted and all of that. If you look at the questions, they really are kind of they're retrospective kinds of questions, which is to say they're geared towards, hey, we're coming in on the front end of this course with these ideas about what personality is, like these first conversations that we're going to have in the discussion forums about what the hell are we even talking about? What do you think it is? How do we make sense of it? So all of the questions there are more geared at, hey, now we've had these months of reading and writing and talking and everything, all this learning. Now look back on this stuff and let's talk about some of those. So anyway, that's all just to say that there's going to be extra credit available. You'll notice that irrespective of when you kind of want to do it, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to do them until much closer to the end of the term. So we'll talk about those as we get to that time as well. Okay, I think that should cover at least the nuts and bolts pieces, which, I mean, like I said, we're already over a half an hour. God, sorry about that. I'm nothing if not verbose, if you haven't gathered that already. This is the problem. They used to be able to put me in a room, a captive audience of hundreds of people, and boy, that was great. Now I'm stuck in my little place here in Portland and just talking at a computer like a weirdo. So welcome to my world. I hope that clarifies a lot of the stuff that you're seeing, that you're going through. Keep going through the materials. Let me know if there are things that are confusing, that aren't clear, whatever, along the way. I will occasionally be sending out other videos like this throughout the term to try and capture big things as we all kind of collectively arrive at them, like the exams and some of that sort of stuff. And otherwise, at least the way that I come at these courses, again, take this for what it's worth. Over these past few years of online teaching, I have found that I kind of lump students into kind of two categories, which isn't probably appropriate, but you'll understand what I mean. A huge proportion of you are taking these online courses for similar kinds of reasons, and often that has to do with you have a life, you have a job, you have a family, you have all these things going on, and this is how education and things can fit into your life, and I respect the out of that. But it also makes it very hard to be super, super engaged. You kind of show up, get your work done, and get it in. And often, particularly in like a 300 level course like the one that we are currently doing, I mean, on average, probably 90% of you who are in this class, I'm never going to talk to. Not for lack of wanting to, but just for the fact that you're going to show up, you're going to participate, you're going to do the work, you're going to engage in the discussions, you're going to get your shit in, you're going to work through the course. And probably by the end, outside of some feedback and some things that you're going to be getting from me and this here and there, we may never even exchange an email. And that is perfectly fine. I have no problem with that. And so, like I say, probably most of you tend to kind of fit more into that category, at least traditionally in my experience. And then there's a different subset there's a lot of variability in there, but folks who either much, much prefer the face-to-face teaching situation, but have to be doing this for any number of potential reasons. Folks who are coming back and aren't familiar with these online platforms, aren't familiar with doing proctoring, aren't familiar with a lot of this kind of stuff, and it's a mess. What I want to say to everybody in here, whether you're on this group or this group, I want to be as involved in this course, in your experience of this course, as you want me to be. Which is to say, for these folks who are like, I just want to get my stuff in, get it done, and live my life, and really don't want to have to deal with me, unless it's absolutely necessary, good deal. Like, yes, no problem. I am never going to hassle anyone. You're never going to get some email from me. Even with folks who are like kind of disappearing, not getting things in, I'm just not the type that's going to start calling you out individually. Hey, what are you doing? You all right? Where's your stuff at? If you want to be left alone, I'm going to leave you alone. But on the other hand, I want to be involved if you want me to be involved. I didn't get into higher education and the university world just to answer emails and grade papers, turns out. I desperately miss the relationships, the teaching, the lecturing, the labs, the actually working with, what are they called? Human beings. I've almost completely forgotten what the rest of my species is like outside of the two that I made. So all of that is to say, if you desire help, if it is helpful to go over things, to ask questions, to whatever the case may be, I am always here. And that's what I'm here for. So email. I try to be as on top of my email as I possibly can be. I don't hold consistent office hours, just frankly because in my experience, it's not worked well. for other people to fit in, saying, I'm going to be on Zoom for right now and then right here on these days and whatever. It has been infinitely better for people to just reach out and say, hey, I was hoping to go over this stuff or prep for the exam or ask about this stuff, and then just find a time to set up either a Zoom or a FaceTime or a phone call or whatever works for you. I can do that. I can absolutely do that. And I love to do that. And one other thing, not to belabor the point, but I have had a lot of positive feedback about this in these past couple of years. So I say it for what it's worth, and I'll probably indicate it again, particularly as we get towards the end of the term. But for those of you who are doing online education, in addition to the difficulties as they relate directly to the course itself, there's this whole other piece of it's just as hard, if not harder, to forge relationships, to create community. When I went to school, I was a first generation college student. No, I didn't know what the hell I was getting myself into. Nobody in my family had ever been there. There's no way in hell I would have survived, let alone figured out what graduate school was, went on, done master's and PhD and all that kind of stuff, if I had not forged really important, meaningful, and helpful relationships with my colleagues, co-students, with the faculty and professors that I was working with the graduate students and the lab people, and that's exceedingly difficult given this digital world we're in now. So all I'm trying to do is I'm kind of putting a plug out there for, hey, yes, we're doing all this stuff with this class, and we're going to talk about this book and this content and these exams. But if you have questions about careers, graduate school, neuroscience, just things that aren't specific to this course, but you don't have those connections, for what it's worth, I just kind of put it out there that I'm here for that too. And not pretending for 1 second that I have all the answers or can do all the things, but I can definitely speak to a hell of a lot. And if I can't, I know who can, and I can get you there. So, okay, that's enough ranting and raving. Good Lord. Welcome to the fall term. Welcome to my crazy world. I'd be excited to see how many of you drop the course after watching this video. I do hope that everything is going well for you in these initial days and getting set up and all of that. I am really excited to work with all of you over the course of this term. There's so much good stuff that we get to go through, talk about. It's really fun. So I'm genuinely excited to be working with you all. Let me know if you encounter any questions, if there's anything I can help with. Outside of that, I'm going to let you do your thing, and I'm going to be in touch as I am doing my thing, and we get this puppy off the ground. So, all right, take care of yourselves. We will talk soon, and cheers.